Money doesn't just divide families, it reveals who they always were. Seattle General Hospital Room, 847. The clock on the wall read 2:37 a.m., its second hand ticking through the silence between labored breaths. Laura Moore had memorized that clock over 58 nights, watching it mark the hours she spent in a vinyl recliner that had molded itself to her spine. Her son, Garrett, slept curled against her side, tablet still playing some science documentary on mute, his 8-year-old face peaceful in the blue glow. Bryn occupied the second recliner, 7 years old, and clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days, her breathing matching the rhythm of her grandmother's oxygen machine. Evelyn Thatcher's hand felt like paper beneath Laura's fingers, translucent skin stretched over prominent veins, nails still painted dusty rose, because even terminal pancreatic cancer couldn't override her mother's insistence on maintaining standards. The morphine drip kept her comfortable, kept her hovering in that space between sleep and awareness, where dying people sometimes spoke truths they'd never voice while fully conscious. Her eyes opened, focused on Laura with an intensity that seemed impossible given the circumstances. The words came out barely above a whisper, "Blackwood." Laura leaned closer, careful not to disturb Garrett. "Don't worry about that now, Mom. Rest." Evelyn's grip tightened with surprising strength for someone whose body had been eating itself for 6 months. "Listen. The house. Not what it seems. 3rd floor, northwest corner." The syllables cost her. Her eyes drifted closed again. The monitor continued its steady beeping, each tone marking another moment closer to the end. Laura didn't understand. Evelyn had bought Blackwood Estate 20 years ago, some investment property that turned into a money pit she never discussed. Maybe mentioned it 3 times in Laura's entire life, always with a dismissive wave, always changing the subject when pressed for details. Down the hall, the elevator chimed. Christopher Thatcher emerged, phone pressed to his ear, Armani suit, somehow perfect at nearly 3 in the morning. He'd been in Tokyo for business meetings, caught the first flight back when the oncologist's tone shifted from months to days to hours. His Italian leather shoes made no sound on the linoleum as he approached, still talking into his phone about some shipping contract, some deal that couldn't wait even for this. He stepped into the room and registered Laura and the children with the kind of glance usually reserved for furniture. "Still here. You should take them home, Laura. This is no place for children." Laura kept her voice low. "They wanted to say goodbye." Christopher moved to the chart at the foot of the bed, scanning numbers he couldn't possibly interpret. "Has she said anything about the arrangements?" "You mean the will?" The defensiveness came quick. "I mean the company. Someone needs to manage the transition. Thatcher Maritime has contracts in 14 countries. The board needs direction." He didn't reach for Evelyn's other hand. Stood for exactly 11 minutes by Laura's count, long enough to take a selfie near the bed with his expression carefully arranged into something resembling grief. The phone came out immediately after, thumbs moving. Posted to LinkedIn before he'd even left the room, at Mother's bedside during her final battle, grateful for every moment. #family first. Then he walked out. At 4:16 a.m. Evelyn woke one final time. Her eyes found Laura's face. Something shifted in her expression, something that looked almost like relief. "You were the only one who stayed." Laura's tears came hot and sudden. "Always, Mom, always. Blackwood, the truth is in the walls. For you, only you." Her grip loosened. The monitor's rhythm changed, that long tone that meant everything and nothing. Time of death, 4:23 a.m. Garrett stirred at the sound, his child's instinct recognizing something wrong before his mind could process it. His voice came out small and afraid. "Mom." Laura pulled both children close, their warmth the only real thing in a room that suddenly felt like it belonged to strangers. "She's at peace now, baby. Grandma's at peace." Lakeview Memorial Chapel smelled like lilies and expensive wood polish. The mahogany casket sat beneath track lighting designed to make it glow, surrounded by flower arrangements so generic that Evelyn would have hated them on principle. She'd always said funeral flowers were a waste, that people should plant trees instead, something that outlasted grief. Christopher stood at the podium delivering a eulogy clearly written by his public relations team. The note cards were a dead giveaway. Evelyn Thatcher was more than a mother. She was a titan of industry, a visionary leader, a beacon of entrepreneurial spirit who built Thatcher Maritime Group from a single tugboat into one of the Pacific Northwest's most respected shipping companies. Garrett leaned close enough to whisper, "Why is Uncle Chris reading from cards? Didn't he know Grandma?" Laura touched her finger to her lips. The boy had a point. Christopher had spent maybe 40 cumulative hours with Evelyn in the last 5 years, always with photographers present, always timed to coincide with quarterly earnings reports. They sat in the back row, Laura in a black dress from Target that she'd bought for parent-teacher conferences, Garrett in his only suit, already straining at the shoulder's brim, in a navy dress with her rabbit hidden in her lap. The front row belonged to Christopher and his wife, Stephanie, Amanda, and her husband, Matthew Ronald Bishop, looking every inch the grieving widower in custom-tailored black. Amanda's phone buzzed during the eulogy. She glanced at it under the cover of her purse. Posted to Instagram within seconds, Laura knew without looking. Some platitude about legacy and strength, accompanied by a photo showcasing her $4,000 Chanel bag positioned just so in the frame. Ronald worked the reception afterward like a political candidate, shaking hands, accepting condolences, positioning himself as the man who would carry forward Evelyn's vision. His voice carried across the room, warm and practiced, telling stories about his late wife that Laura knew for fact had never happened. Christopher cornered her near the catering table, champagne flute in hand, despite the 11 o'clock hour. "We should talk about the house situation. I'm sure Mom left instructions about selling Blackwood. I know a developer who'd take it off our hands for land value, save everyone the headache of managing it." Laura kept her expression neutral. "The will hasn't been read yet." His smile carried the patronizing warmth of someone explaining simple concepts to a slow child. "Right. Well, when it is, we'll make sure you're taken care of. Don't worry about the business complexities. Amanda and I will handle the heavy lifting. You've got enough on your plate with the kids and your teaching job." The pat on her shoulder felt like dismissal. Amanda joined them, her attorney's smile sharp enough to draw blood. "Laura, honey, if you need help with Mom's personal effects, clothes, jewelry, that sort of thing, I can organize estate sales. You don't need to burden yourself with logistics." Translation crackling beneath the concern, they were already dividing Evelyn's possessions in their minds, already calculating values, already deciding what belonged to whom. Laura said nothing, let them fill the silence with their assumptions. That night, sorting through the plastic hospital bag that held Evelyn's final belongings, Laura found a note tucked inside the Bible her mother had kept on the bedside table. The handwriting was shaky, but unmistakable. "Kenneth Aldridge, trust only him. Read the will in person. Do not sign anything before you understand everything. The law offices of Aldridge and Associates, occupied the 42nd floor of Columbia Tower, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains beyond. Kenneth Aldridge's personal office was all dark wood and leather, the kind of space where serious money got managed with quiet efficiency. Laura arrived with both children because she had no one to watch them and couldn't afford a babysitter. Garrett wore his school clothes, Bryn clutched her rabbit. They took seats in the corner with coloring books, while the adults arranged themselves around Kenneth's conference table. Christopher and Stephanie, Amanda and Matthew, Ronald looking somehow both bereaved and expectant. The air smelled like expensive cologne and barely concealed greed. Kenneth sat behind his desk, a manila envelope stamped with Evelyn's seal resting in front of him. His expression gave away nothing, decades of practicing law having taught him the value of a neutral face. Before we begin, I'm required to inform you that Evelyn Thatcher was of sound mind when she executed this will. I have medical documentation and video testimony confirming her capacity, witnessed and notarized. Any challenges to her competency will fail. Christopher rolled his eyes. Amanda's fingers drummed once against her armrest. We're not contesting anything, Kenneth. Let's just get through this. The envelope opened with a sound that seemed too loud in the quiet room. Kenneth withdrew several pages, legal paper covered in dense text. To my husband, Ronald Bishop, I leave my downtown penthouse condominium and the sum of $3 million in liquid assets to be disbursed from account ending in 7734. Ronald exhaled, relief or satisfaction, hard to tell. To my stepson, Christopher Thatcher, I leave 40% of Thatcher Maritime Group shares and the associated offshore investment accounts, totaling approximately $7.2 million after tax considerations. Christopher's grin came quick. Stephanie squeezed his hand under the table, her wedding ring catching the light. To my stepdaughter, Amanda Winters, I leave 40% of Thatcher Maritime Group shares and the commercial property portfolio, totaling approximately $7.2 million after tax considerations. Amanda's smile stayed tight and professional, but Laura saw Matthew nod, saw the calculation happening behind his banker's eyes. 3 inheritances down. Laura sat very still. Garrett had stopped coloring. Bryn watched with the intuition children have for sensing when adults are tense. Kenneth's pause lasted 3 seconds too long. He looked directly at Laura before continuing. To my daughter, Laura Moore, I leave Blackwood Estate and all contents therein, including any and all items, documents, or materials found within the structure or on the grounds. Christopher sat forward. Additionally, I leave her the remaining 20% of Thatcher Maritime Group shares. Christopher's voice came sharp. Wait, 20%. That gives her controlling interest if she allies with either of us. Kenneth continued without acknowledging the interruption. With the provision that said shares must be sold back to the company within 60 days of probate closing at fair market value as determined by independent assessment. All proceeds go to Laura Moore. Amanda's mind worked fast, always did. That's approximately $3.6 million, plus whatever Blackwood sells for. Laura's confusion must have shown on her face. I don't understand. Mom's leaving me the house and forcing me to sell the shares. Kenneth's expression stayed carefully neutral. Those were her specific instructions. Very specific. Christopher's laugh came out harsh. Blackwood. Oh, Laura, I'm so sorry. I really am. Stephanie made a small sound of theatrical sympathy. Kenneth opened a second folder, this one thicker. Laura, your mother asked me to provide these documents to you following the reading. He slid them across the polished wood. Laura's hands shook, picking them up. Property tax bill, $31,000 annually. Structural engineer's report dated 18 months prior, unsafe for habitation, without minimum $800,000 in immediate repairs. Recommend professional demolition. Historical landmark designation from the State Preservation Board property cannot be demolished or substantially altered without board approval. Applications typically require 18 to 24 months for review. County Assessor's evaluation, unsellable in current condition. Estimated market value of land, only $45,000. The numbers swam. Laura read them twice, 3 times, trying to make sense of mathematics that didn't add up to anything good. Stephanie's sympathy sounded genuine this time, which somehow made it worse. "Oh my God, Laura, this is awful." Matthew leaned forward. "Can she refuse the inheritance?" Kenneth's answer came measured and careful. "She can disclaim it, but Blackwood would then go to a state auction to satisfy outstanding liens and tax debts. The county would seize it, sell it for whatever they could get, and Laura would be personally liable for the difference between sale price and total debt." Laura's voice barely carried across the table. "How much difference?" Based on current assessments, Blackwood would likely sell for $50,000 land value, only given the structure's condition. Tax, debt, and accumulated liens total approximately $200,000. You would owe the estate $150,000. Silence fell like a physical weight. Bryn tugged at Laura's sleeve. "Mom, what's wrong?" Laura forced something resembling a smile. "Nothing, sweetie. Everything's fine." Ronald spoke up, his voice carrying just the right note of concern. "Kenneth, this seems cruel. Evelyn wouldn't have intentionally burdened Laura this way. Perhaps there was some confusion in her final days. The medication. I assure you she was extraordinarily clear. She revised this will 3 times in the final year to ensure these exact terms. The video testimony I mentioned shows her explaining her reasoning in detail." Amanda turned to Laura with an expression that probably looked kind to people who didn't know her. "Listen, we can help. You take the house, we'll help you navigate selling it. Maybe the 4 of us pool resources, buy it from you, above market value, demolish it properly, flip the land to a developer. We'd be doing you a favor, really." Christopher nodded. "Write it off as a family expense. You'd walk away clean, no debt." Laura looked at Kenneth, something in his eyes, not quite a warning, not quite a message, but something deliberate in the way he held her gaze. "May I have the keys, please?" He produced them from his desk drawer, an old iron key that looked Victorian, a modern deadbolt key, and a hand-drawn map showing the route from Seattle to Blackwood Estate. "Your mother also wanted me to give you this." The small envelope was sealed with wax, her name written across it in Evelyn's distinctive script. Laura turned it over in her hands. "Can I open it now?" "She requested you wait until you're at Blackwood." Laura stood gathering her purse and children. "Thank you, Mr. Aldridge. I appreciate your time and discretion." Christopher stood too. "Laura, be reasonable. At least let us hire proper inspectors. Get comprehensive assessments before you make any decisions." "I'll handle it myself." The elevator ride down 42 floors felt longer than it should have. Garrett pressed close to her side. "Are we going to live in Grandma's house?" Laura watched the floor numbers descend. "I don't know yet, honey. Is it really haunted like Uncle Chris said?" "No, baby. It's just old and needs work." But her hands wouldn't stop shaking around the envelope. 2 weeks later, Laura's apartment lease expired on a Tuesday. She had spent those 14 days running calculations that all ended the same way, insolvent within 60 days, no matter which path she chose. A new apartment meant $1,900 monthly she didn't have. Moving to Phoenix with her sister meant uprooting Garrett and Bryn, mid-school year, losing her teaching position, starting over in a city where she knew no one except family who'd made it clear their guest room came with an expiration date. Blackwood was free, uninhabitable, but free. She chose survival over comfort. The U-Haul truck held everything they owned: 3 mattresses, 14 boxes of clothes and kitchen basics, toys and books, and the small accumulation of a life built on a teacher's salary. It fit in 12 cubic feet with room to spare. Highway 101 North cut through rain that hadn't stopped for 3 days. Garrett had his phone out, reading Wikipedia articles about Blackwood Estate's history aloud from the passenger seat. Built in 1889 by lumber baron Sebastian Blackwood, it has 52 rooms, 14 fireplaces, and was abandoned in 1957 after the last heir died with no will. The property went through 6 owners before Grandma bought it in. Laura cut him off gently. "That's enough horror stories for now. I'm just saying it's historically significant. There's a whole preservation society dedicated to Victorian architecture in Washington." Garrett, he went quiet, returned to scrolling. In the back seat, Bryn stared out the window at the rain. "Will there be other kids to play with?" "There's a town 3 miles from the house. You'll both go to school there, make friends." "I don't want to make new friends. I want my old friends." Laura had no good answer for that, took the exit marked Forks, followed the hand-drawn map through increasingly narrow roads until pavement gave way to gravel. The driveway appeared almost by accident easy to miss between overgrown hedges, potholes deep enough to scrape the RAV4's undercarriage, trees pressing in from both sides, branches forming a tunnel that blocked most of the remaining daylight. Then through the mist, Blackwood Estate. 3 stories of Victorian Gothic architecture slowly surrendering to gravity and time. The widow's walk tilted at an angle that defied physics. Windows gaped like missing teeth, some broken, some simply gone. The wraparound porch sagged in the middle wood, visibly rotting. Paint that might have been white or gray a century ago had peeled away to bare boards, stained black with mold. It looked like every nightmare about haunted houses made real. Garrett's excitement was genuine and immediate. "This is amazing!" Bryn started crying. "Mom, I don't want to live here. Please, can we go back?" Laura put the car in park but left the engine running, heater blowing. They sat there, none of them moving to get out. She opened Evelyn's envelope with fingers that had gone numb. Inside, a single page, handwriting shaky but unmistakable. "Laura, if you're reading this at Blackwood, it means you chose to stay. Good. I know this looks like punishment. It's not. The house is a test of vision, of patience, of whether you're truly my daughter. Christopher and Amanda will fail their tests too, just different ones. Trust Kenneth. Trust yourself. Trust that I loved you most. Don't give up on Blackwood until you've truly seen it. Start on the 3rd floor, northwest corner. All my love, Mom." Laura read it 3 times before the words made any kind of sense. Not punishment, a test. She killed the engine. Come on, let's see what we're working with. The front door required her full weight against it, wood swollen from decades of moisture. It gave with a shriek of rusted hinges that sent birds exploding from the eaves. The smell hit immediately. Mildew and rot and dead things and century-old dust, thick enough to taste. The foyer stretched before them, peeling wallpaper, a crystal chandelier hanging by a single chain floorboards, warped into waves. The grand staircase was missing every third step, the remaining ones looking suspect at best. Garrett's enthusiasm didn't waver. "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." Bryn clung to Laura's coat. "I want to go back to our apartment." "We can't, honey. Someone else lives there now." They moved through the ground floor with careful steps. The kitchen still had 1950s appliances that hadn't worked in decades, ceiling stained brown from water-damaged mouse droppings, thick in the corners. The drawing room held furniture covered in moldy sheets, the fireplace choked with dead birds and nests. The library stretched 40 feet long, floor-to-ceiling built-in shelves, holding books, rotted to pulp windows, broken rain damage, turning everything to black sludge. Upstairs revealed 14 bedrooms, most too dangerous to enter. The floor gave ominously under Laura's weight. But the third-floor northwest corner, a locked door, the old iron key fit. Inside a small room, maybe 12 by 12, surprisingly dry. One window cracked, but still intact. Hardwood floor damaged, but not rotting. And on the wall, in a simple frame, an architectural blueprint. Original Blackwood estate plans, dated 1889, signed by the architect. Laura studied it while Garrett and Bryn explored the empty room. Something caught her attention. The second-floor layout showed a room labeled Private Study, positioned between the library and the master stairwell. But they'd walked through that space. Just a closet, nothing remarkable. Garrett appeared at her shoulder. "Mom, this room on the map isn't there." "What do you mean?" "Look!" His finger traced the blueprint between the library and the stairwell. "This shows a whole room, but when we walked through, there was only that locked closet. The dimensions don't match." Laura's heart rate picked up. Evelyn's words echoed, "The truth is in the walls." They set up camp in the third-floor room. Air mattresses, sleeping bags, camping lanterns, because the electricity wouldn't be reconnected for another 3 days. Granola bars for dinner, because the kitchen was unusable. Bryn cried herself to sleep. Garrett kept shining his flashlight at the ceiling. "I heard something moving up there." "Just squirrels, baby." But Laura didn't sleep. Listened to the house-settling wind through broken windows, branches scraping the roof, something definitely moving in the walls. At 2 in the morning, she read Evelyn's note again by flashlight. Start on the third floor, northwest corner. She was in the northwest corner, with a blueprint showing a room that didn't exist. Tomorrow she'd investigate. Day 3 brought reconnected power and the ability to charge phones, run space heaters, see clearly enough to understand just how bad things were. Water remained off. The plumber had quoted $18,000 to replace all the pipes. They used gallon jugs from the grocery store, bathed with wet wipes, relied on a portable camping toilet that Garrett thought was an adventure and Bryn found humiliating. Laura's checking account showed $2,847. Teacher's salary plus the small refund from breaking her apartment lease. Monthly expenses ran about $1,000. Property tax, due in 4.5 months, $31,000. The mathematics of bankruptcy spread before her every time she closed her eyes. Day 5. Garrett and Bryn started at the local elementary school. Bryn came home crying because a classmate had called her family weird and poor. Garrett came home with a split lip from defending his sister. The principal called requesting a meeting. Laura sat in her car outside the school, afterward, head against the steering wheel, trying not to fall apart. Her phone buzzed. Text from Christopher. "How's the haunted mansion? Found any ghosts? Stephanie and I just closed on a summer home in Aspen. You should visit sometime." Attached photos showed them in front of a massive timber-frame chalet, mountains behind them, smiles bright as magazine covers. Laura deleted it without responding. Day 7 delivered the official property tax notice. $31,000 due in 128 days. The paper felt heavy in her hands. She spread bills across the kitchen table, the only piece of furniture still structurally sound, and ran the numbers again. Tried to find a path through that didn't end in financial ruin. Nothing. Every scenario ended the same way. That night she climbed to the third-floor room and stared at the blueprint until the details blurred. The hidden room, between the library and the stairwell. Tomorrow. She'd search tomorrow. Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. Laura sent Garrett and Bryn to stay with Shirley Croft, the elderly neighbor who'd appeared on day 2 with homemade cookies and an offer to babysit any time. Returned to Blackwood armed with a flashlight, crowbar, tape measure, and notepad. The library measured 30 by 40 according to the blueprint. But when Laura paced it off, her measurements came out 30 by 34. 6 feet missing somewhere. The adjacent hallway connected to the master stairwell. A large closet occupied the wall the library shared. The modern key opened it to reveal shelves holding mouse-eaten linens and nothing else. 4 feet deep, 6 feet wide. Laura tapped the back wall. Different sound, hollow. She ran her hands along the edges, found a seam so perfectly hidden that only direct light revealed it. Not part of the wall, a panel on concealed hinges. The crowbar fit into the seam. She pulled. The panel swung inward with a crack of wood that hadn't moved in decades. Behind it, darkness, cold air. The smell of old paper. Stone steps descended into earth. Laura shined her flashlight down. 14 steps leading to a chamber dug beneath the house. Not a basement. Purpose-built. Brick walls, vaulted ceiling, maybe 12 by 12 feet. In the center, a safe. Not Victorian iron, modern brushed steel, biometric scanner, and digital keypad. Laura approached slowly, half expecting it to vanish like some fever dream. On top, a brass plaque for Laura Moore and her children. This wasn't old. Evelyn had installed this recently. Very recently. The fingerprint scanner didn't recognize Laura's print. The keypad wanted 8 digits. She tried Evelyn's birthday. Access denied. Her own birthday. Denied. Garrett's denied. Bryn's denied. After 5 attempts, the safe locked itself for 24 hours. Laura sat on the cold stone floor. Evelyn's note said, "Start on the 3rd floor." Maybe another clue waited upstairs. Maybe this whole thing was some elaborate message she was too tired and scared to understand. She climbed back up to daylight and drove to collect her children. Shirley Croft's cottage smelled like tea and wood smoke. Garrett and Bryn were on the floor playing with a large orange cat named Mr. Whiskers. Shirley poured tea from a porcelain pot that looked older than the house. "You look exhausted, dear." Laura accepted the cup. "The house is more than I expected." Shirley smiled, with a warmth that reached her eyes. "Evelyn told me you'd come. We talked about it last year." "You knew my mother. For 23 years. Since she bought Blackwood, she'd visit every few months, have tea just like this, tell me about her plans. Laura set down her cup carefully. Did she ever say why she bought it? It's not exactly a smart investment. She said it was for her daughter, the one who understood loyalty, surely stood with the careful movements of someone whose joints didn't work quite right anymore. She went to a bookshelf crammed with volumes and pulled out a leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with initials, Eat. She gave this to me 2 years ago, said if anything happened to her, I should give it to Laura Moore when she came to Blackwood. Laura took it with the trembling hands, opened to the first page. Year 1 of the plan. Today I purchased Blackwood Estate. Christopher called me senile. Amanda asked if I was having a breakdown. Ronald suggested I see a therapist. Only Laura understood when I told her I was preserving history. She's the only one who sees value in things that don't have price tags. I've begun documenting C&A's embezzlements. The paper trail starts here. Laura's hand shook. How long was Mom planning this? She started that journal 20 years ago, filled 6 volumes. That's the first one. Where are the others? She said you'd find them when you were ready. Laura flipped through pages, Evelyn's handwriting still strong in these early entries, details about Blackwood renovations, property assessments, and interspersed between the mundane, financial irregularities. Christopher's vendor kickbacks, documented with dates and dollar amounts. Amanda's shell company formations. Ronald's charity receipts that didn't match disbursements, all of it methodical, patient, building a case over 2 decades. The final page of Volume 1 stopped her cold. Combination for safe, when time comes, the coordinates where I told Laura about her father's betrayal, plus the date she became a mother. She'll remember. She's always remembered what matters. Laura's breath caught the conversation. She remembered. 15 years ago, pregnant at 19, abandoned by a boyfriend who'd promised forever and delivered 6 months. Evelyn had driven her to Snoqualmie Pass to an overlook at mile marker 42.71. They'd sat on a bench while Laura cried. Her mother's voice came back clear as yesterday. Men like him don't deserve your tears. I'm scared, Mom. I'm so scared. Listen to me. You are stronger than you know. You'll raise this child alone. And you'll be magnificent. I know because I did it too. What your father left me when you were 6 months old. I never told you because I didn't want you to feel his abandonment. But Laura, you are not defined by who left. You're defined by who stays. I don't know if I can do this. Yes, you can, because you're mine, and we don't quit. Evelyn had held her while she sobbed, the mountain air cold, the view stretching forever. Remember this place. Remember this moment, the day you became stronger than your fear. Coordinates 42, North 71, West. Date, Garrett was born October 6th. Laura knew the combination. She thanked Shirley, gathered her children, drove back to Blackwood faster than she should have. Evening settled over the estate like a held breath. Garrett and Bryn slept upstairs, exhausted from playing with Mr. Whiskers all afternoon. Laura descended to the hidden vault alone. The keypad glowed in the darkness. She entered 427-11006. The safe beeped. Green light. Click. The heavy door swung open on hinges that moved like silk. Inside 4 shelves. The first held stock certificates. Laura counted 15 different companies. All tech. Google, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Tesla. Purchase dates ranging from 1997 to 2003, before they were giants, when they were risks. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, searched current valuations, did math that couldn't be right, did it again. $47 million. The second shelf held 3 USB drives labeled Evidence A, B, C, encrypted based on the labels. The third shelf property, deed for Blackwood Estate, plus 200 acres, but stapled to it an addendum she'd never seen. Underground aquifer with natural spring, identified 2019, mineral rights retained. Third-party interest, BioClear Technologies, standing offer $85 million for exclusive water rights. Offer valid until December 2024. Air approval required. $85 million for water. The fourth shelf held one handwritten letter. Laura unfolded it, her mother's last words written in ink that had started to fade. The letter began, "My dearest Laura, if you're reading this, you've solved the puzzle. My dearest Laura, if you're reading this, you've solved the puzzle." The words continued across 3 pages, Evelyn's handwriting growing shakier toward the end, written when pain and medication made even holding a pen difficult. "I'm writing this 6 weeks before my death. The doctors say 8 to 12 weeks, but I know my body better than they do. 6 weeks, maybe 7 if I'm stubborn. By now, you've seen the stocks. Bought them when Christopher was too busy with his MBA to notice where my money went. He thought I was investing in mutual funds like a safe little widow. Instead, I bought companies run by people who reminded me of myself, hungry, brilliant, willing to risk everything. The water rights are your choice. BioClear's offer is legitimate. $85 million for exclusive access to the aquifer. They want to bottle it, sell it as premium spring water to wealthy idiots who think water tastes better when it costs $12 a bottle. You could take that money, set yourself up for life, give my grandchildren everything. Or you could refuse. Keep the land intact, protect the aquifer, choose legacy over wealth. I won't tell you what to do. This is your test, not mine. The USB drives contain evidence I've gathered over 19 years. Every crime, every lie, Christopher's kickbacks, Amanda's tax fraud, Ronald's embezzlement, all of it documented with bank records, emails, recorded phone calls, video footage. I hired investigators, paid them well to be thorough and discreet. Everything is admissible in court, verified by forensic accountants, ready to hand to federal prosecutors. But here's what you need to understand. If you use this evidence, you destroy them. Christopher will go to prison. Amanda will be disbarred and prosecuted. Ronald will die in a cell. Their families will suffer. Their children, your nephew, your niece, will grow up with parents behind bars. This is your second test, justice or mercy. I chose justice. I'm giving you the weapons, but I'm not forcing you to use them. That decision must be yours, made with full knowledge of the consequences. The drives are encrypted. You'll need help accessing them. There's a man in Port Angeles, Jonathan Hayes, former NSA, now does cybersecurity consulting. He helped me set up the encryption. Tell him I sent you. He'll know what to do. One more thing, my darling girl. The stocks are worth $47 million now, but that value will fluctuate. Sell carefully, strategically. Don't flood the market. Work with a financial advisor you trust, not Christopher, not Amanda, not anyone who knew me. You have resources now, real power. Use it wisely. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you any of this while I was alive. Sorry I had to test you this way. But I needed to know you'd fight for what you believed in, not just accept what others handed you. You stayed when they left. You cared when they took. You loved when they calculated. That's why you get everything that matters. Tell Garrett and Bryn that Grandma loved them more than words could say. Tell them the greatest inheritance isn't money, it's knowing your own worth. I'm proud of you. I was always proud of you. All my love forever. Mom. Laura read it 3 times sitting on the cold stone floor of the vault. The letter blurred as tears came hot and sudden and painful. Not grief anymore. She'd spent that in the hospital chair over 60 nights. This was something else. Vindication, mixed with terror, mixed with a responsibility so heavy it felt physical. Her mother had handed her a loaded gun and walked away. The stocks alone meant Garrett and Bryn would never worry about money. College funds, security freedom from the paycheck-to-paycheck existence that had defined Laura's adult life. The evidence meant power, the ability to destroy 3 people who'd spent decades taking things that didn't belong to them. The aquifer meant choosing between generational wealth and environmental protection, all of it hers to decide. She climbed the stairs, locked the panel, emerged into the closet, and then the hallway, checked her phone, 11:47 p.m. Too late to call anyone, too early to sleep. Instead, she went to the library, sat on the least damaged section of floor, and searched for Jonathan Hayes on her phone. Hayes, Cybersecurity Consulting, Port Angeles office, former NSA signals analyst, now specializing in data recovery and digital forensics. Client list included 3 Fortune 500 companies and 2 government agencies. His rates started at $300 an hour. Laura had $2,847 total. She sent an email anyway. Mr. Hayes, my name is Laura Moore. Evelyn Thatcher was my mother. She passed away recently and left me encrypted USB drives that she said you helped prepare. She told me you would know what to do. I need your help accessing them, but I should be honest. I can't afford your normal rates. If you could recommend someone less expensive, or if there's any kind of payment plan, I would appreciate it. Thank you, Laura Moore. She hit send before she could second-guess the wording. Climbed back to the 3rd floor, lay down on her air mattress between her sleeping children, and didn't expect to sleep. Woke at 6:17 a.m. to her phone buzzing. Email from Jonathan Hayes, time-stamped 6:02 a.m. Ms. Moore. Evelyn told me if you ever contacted me, I was to help you immediately, no charge. She prepaid my services 2 years ago. I can meet you today if you're available. I'll come to you. Evelyn mentioned Blackwood Estate. Is that still your location? Bring the drives. This will take several hours. John Hayes. Laura blinked at the screen. Evelyn had paid him 2 years ago. 2 years before her death, her mother had been planning this moment. She typed back, "Today works. Anytime after 9 a.m. Thank you." Jonathan Hayes arrived at 10:15 in a black Tacoma that had seen better decades. Early 40s maybe, though his face was hard to age, the kind of weathered that came from outdoor work mixed with screen time. Worn Carhartt jacket jeans, boots that had walked through actual mud. He carried a laptop bag and a backpack that looked military surplus. Laura met him on the porch. Garrett and Brennan watched from the foyer window, curious about the stranger. Laura Moore. Yes, thank you for coming. I'm sorry about the house. It's not exactly habitable yet. He glanced at the structure, taking in the damage with an assessing eye. Evelyn showed me pictures, said you'd be restoring it. She was optimistic. Something flickered in his expression. She was a lot of things. Optimistic wasn't usually one of them. Visionary, yes. Strategic, definitely. But she didn't hope for outcomes, she engineered them. He said it like someone who'd known Evelyn well, which seemed impossible. Laura's confusion must have shown. She hired me 6 years ago. We worked together on various projects. Data security for the company at first, then personal matters. She talked about you constantly. She did. You and your kids. She carried pictures on her phone, showed them to me every time we met. Said you were the only person in her life who'd chosen love over money. Laura's throat tightened. I didn't know she told people that. She didn't tell many people anything. I was one of maybe 3 she trusted. He shifted the laptop bag. Should we get started, the encryption is military grade. It'll take time to crack even with the keys she gave me. She led him inside, past Garrett and Bryn, who watched with wide eyes. This is Mr. Hayes. He's helping me with some computer work Grandma left me. Garrett perked up immediately. What kind of encryption? ESRSA. Something custom? John smiled. Combination. Your grandma didn't do anything halfway. Can I watch? Laura started to say no, but John spoke first. If your mom says it's okay, sure. Fair warning, it's pretty boring. Lots of waiting for algorithms to run. They set up in the library, John spreading his equipment across a section of floor Laura had covered with a tarp. 2 laptops, an external hard drive, array cables, and adapters. He worked efficiently, barely speaking except to confirm details. Laura provided the USB drives. He connected them to an isolated system, air-gapped, he called it, no internet connection, to prevent data leaks. The first drive asked for a 64-character passphrase. John pulled out a notebook, flipped to a marked page, entered a string of random-looking characters. The drive unlocked. Evelyn gave me 3 keys, 1 for each drive. She said only you would have the physical drives, only I would have the keys. 2-factor security without trusting either of us completely. That sounds like her. The first drive contained financial records. John opened the root directory folders labeled with names. Christopher, Amanda, Ronald. Do you want to see this, or should I just extract everything and organize it? Laura glanced at Garrett, who was absorbed in watching code scroll across John's second laptop. I should see it. I need to understand what I'm dealing with. He opened Christopher's folder. Spreadsheets, scanned documents, email archives. The first file was a forensic accounting report dated 18 months prior. Summary. Christopher Thatcher had embezzled $6.2 million from Thatcher Maritime Group over 8 years through fraudulent vendor contracts. Companies that existed on paper, invoiced for services, never rendered payments routed through a Delaware LLC that Christopher secretly owned. The documentation was extensive. Bank statements showing the transfers, corporate emails where Christopher approved his own fake invoices, articles of incorporation for the shell company with his signature. Laura's hands went cold, reading it. John's voice stayed neutral. Should I continue? Yes? Amanda's folder revealed tax fraud. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands holding $4.5 million in capital gains that should have been reported to the IRS. Shell companies set up to hide the money, attorney-client privilege abused to conceal the transactions. Amanda had used her legal expertise to build a system designed specifically to evade taxes while maintaining plausible deniability. The evidence included incorporation documents, wire transfer records, email instructions to her assistant about moving money off the books. Ronald's folder was somehow worse. The Bishop Foundation, his supposed charity for at-risk children, had collected $7.3 million in donations over 10 years. Actual charitable spending, $890,000. The rest had funded Ronald's lifestyle, luxury cars, the downtown penthouse before he married Evelyn, a yacht registered in Monaco, tax forms showing false reporting, bank statements proving the misappropriation, photos of Ronald on the yacht time-stamped, while the foundation's website claimed all donations went directly to programs. Laura felt sick. "This is everything." John shook his head. "This is Drive 1. Financial evidence. Drive 2 is communications emails, text messages, phone recordings. Drive 3 is video and photographic evidence. My mother recorded them. She hired people to record them. Private investigators, forensic accountants, even an ex-FBI agent who specialized in white-collar crime. Everything here is court-ready, chain of custody documented, witnesses prepared to testify if needed." Garrett looked up from the laptop screen. "Mom, what's embezzlement?" Laura chose her words carefully. "It's when someone steals money from a company or organization they work for." Did Uncle Chris steal money? The question hung in the air. John stayed quiet, giving her space to answer. "Yes, baby, he did." "Is that why Grandma left him the company shares? Because she knew he stole and wanted to trap him?" "Sometimes 8-year-olds understood things adults tried to hide." "Something like that." Garrett nodded slowly, processing. "That's pretty smart. Mean, but smart." John spent the next 4 hours extracting and organizing files. Laura sent Bryn to play upstairs, but Garrett stayed fascinated by the technical process. John explained things in terms the boy could understand, talking about encryption like puzzles, data recovery like archaeology. Around 3 p.m., John sat back, stretching. "That's everything. I've copied it all to this external drive." He held up a small portable hard drive, encrypted with a new key. "Here's the passphrase." He handed her a sealed envelope. "Memorize it, then destroy the paper. Don't store it digitally anywhere. Don't write it down anywhere, except maybe in a safe deposit box." "What do I do with all this?" His expression stayed carefully neutral. "That's not my decision. Evelyn hired me to secure the data and give you access. What you do with it is between you and your conscience." "What would you do?" "I'd ask myself what kind of justice I believed in. The kind that punishes every crime, or the kind that weighs consequences against punishment." He paused. "But I'm not you. I don't have to live with whatever decision you make." And after John left, Laura spent an hour reviewing the evidence on her own laptop. The scope was staggering. Evelyn hadn't just documented crimes, she'd built prosecutable cases. Any federal prosecutor would jump at this. Wire fraud, tax evasion, charity fraud, RICO charges if they wanted to be aggressive. Christopher, Amanda, and Ronald would all face significant prison time. Their spouses might be implicated too. Stephanie had signed some of the fraudulent contracts. Matthew had helped set up Amanda's offshore accounts. Their children would suffer most. Christopher's daughter was 12. Amanda's son was 10. Kids who'd grow up visiting parents in federal prison, marked by their family's disgrace. Laura closed the laptop. She had power now. The question was whether having power meant using it. Her phone rang. Number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Moore, this is Rebecca Chandler from BioClear Technologies. I hope this isn't a bad time." Laura's stomach dropped. "How did you get this number?" "Your mother provided it in her pre-contract materials. I'm calling about the aquifer offer. I understand you've recently inherited the Blackwood property, and I wanted to reach out personally to discuss our proposal. I haven't had time to review any proposals. Rebecca's voice carried professional warmth. Of course, this is an overwhelming time. I don't want to pressure you, but our offer does have a deadline. December 2024. That's still 8 months away, but these things take time to structure properly. Would you be open to a meeting just to understand what we're offering and answer any questions? 8 months felt like forever, and no time at all. Can you email me the details first? I'd like to review everything before we meet. Absolutely. I'll send our full presentation today. Take your time. We're very interested in working with you, Ms. Moore. Your mother was a remarkable negotiator. I hope we can build the same relationship. The call ended. Laura sat in the empty library, surrounded by water-damaged books and evidence of crimes and choices she wasn't ready to make. Her phone buzzed again. Text from John. Forgot to mention, if you need help understanding any of the financial documents, I know a forensic accountant. Former colleague, completely discreet. Then a second text. Also, if you ever need carpentry work on the house, I do that too. Former hobby that turned into a side business. No pressure, just offering. Laura stared at the messages. The offer felt genuine, not transactional, like he actually wanted to help rather than extract payment. She typed back, I might take you up on both. Thank you for today. The response came within seconds. Anytime. Evelyn prepaid enough hours to cover whatever you need. She believed in you. So do I. A stranger's faith felt heavier than it should. That night, after the kids were asleep, Laura made a spreadsheet. Numbers she could control when everything else felt chaotic. Assets. Stocks, $47 million approximate. Blackwood Estate, $45,000. Land value plus restored value. Aquifer rights, $85 million. BioClear offer. Company shares must sell $3,600,000. Total somewhere between $50.6 million and $135.6 million, depending on decisions. Liabilities. Property tax, $31,000, due in 113 days. Immediate house repairs, $50,000, make barely habitable. Full restoration, $800,000 plus per engineer's estimate. Current cash, $2,847. The gap between assets and liquidity was absurd. She owned tens of millions on paper, but couldn't afford groceries next month. She needed to sell stock, just enough to cover immediate needs without tanking the market price. John had mentioned a forensic accountant. She needed that, and a financial advisor, and probably a lawyer who wasn't related to anyone involved in this mess. Her phone showed 11:34 p.m. Too late to make calls, too early to sleep. Instead, she opened her laptop and started researching the aquifer. BioClear's website showed premium bottled water products marketed to luxury hotels and high-end restaurants. Their environmental page talked about sustainable sourcing and carbon-neutral operations. But independent reviews told different stories. Communities where BioClear had bought water rights reported dried-up wells conflicts over access ecosystem damage. The company had a pattern move in extract maximum value leave when the political pressure got too high. $85 million to let them do that to Blackwood's aquifer. Laura closed the laptop. Some decisions couldn't be made at midnight in a house that creaked like it was trying to speak. Morning brought Garrett bouncing into her makeshift bedroom at 6:47 a.m. "Mom, Mr. Hayes sent me an email." Laura blinked awake. "What? Look!" He shoved his tablet at her. The email was brief. Hey, Garrett, you asked good questions yesterday about encryption algorithms. If you're interested in computer security, here are some beginner-friendly resources. The field needs more people who think like you do. John attached links to Khan Academy, Coding Courses, a YouTube channel about cryptography, and a beginner's guide to Python. Can I do the courses, Liz? Laura skimmed them. All free, all educational, all age-appropriate. Yes, but you still have to do your regular homework first. He was already opening the first link before she finished the sentence. Bryn appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. Is breakfast ready? Give me 10 minutes, honey. In the kitchen, still barely functional, but improving, Laura made oatmeal on the camping stove. The normalcy of it felt surreal. Her children eating breakfast, while evidence of federal crimes sat encrypted on a hard drive upstairs, while decisions worth hundreds of millions waited for her attention. Bryn ate slowly, pushing oats around her bowl. What's wrong, baby? I miss our old apartment. I miss my old school. I miss when things were normal. Laura's heart cracked. I know. I'm sorry this has been so hard. Will it ever be normal again? The question deserved honesty. It'll be different. Not the same as before, but we'll find a new normal. I promise. What if I don't like the new normal? Then we'll keep adjusting until we find something that works. Bryn seemed to accept that, returning to her oatmeal with slightly less reluctance. Garrett barely looked up from his tablet, already absorbed in a video about Caesar ciphers. Laura's phone rang. Kenneth Aldridge. She stepped into the library for privacy. Mr. Aldridge? Laura. I hope I'm not calling too early. I wanted to check in. How are you managing? That's a complicated question. I imagine so. Have you had time to explore Blackwood thoroughly? The careful phrasing suggested he knew more than he'd said at the will reading. I found some things my mother left me in the house. I suspected you might. Evelyn was thorough in ways most people never understood. Pause. Laura, I'm calling because I received a notice from the county about your property taxes. They're due in 16 weeks. I know. Do you have the funds to cover them? I'm working on it. I can help with that. Not as a loan, as estate management. Your mother's will included provisions for me to assist with transitional expenses if needed. Laura hadn't known that. What kind of assistance? I have authorization to advance up to $100,000 from estate reserves for immediate property needs, taxes, repairs, whatever keeps Blackwood viable while you settle her affairs. Why didn't you mention this at the reading? Because your mother specified I should only offer if you demonstrated commitment to staying at Blackwood. Anyone can claim they'll honor a legacy. You've actually moved in. That's different. The money would solve immediate problems, buy time to make better decisions about selling stocks, handling the evidence, dealing with BioClear. What are the terms? The money comes from a trust Evelyn established specifically for Blackwood's preservation. No repayment required, no interest, no strings except that it must be used for the property. That seems too generous. Kenneth's voice carried something close to warmth. Your mother was many things, Laura. Generous wasn't typically one of them, but she believed in investing in things she valued. She valued you. She valued what you might do with Blackwood. I'll need to think about it. Of course, but don't wait too long. Property tax deadlines are firm. After the call ended, Laura stood in the library, surrounded by rot and possibility. Money was appearing from unexpected places. Evelyn had seeded resources throughout her final years, creating safety nets Laura was only now discovering. Safety nets didn't make decisions easier. They just removed the excuse that desperation was driving choices. John returned 3 days later with his truck full of lumber and tools. Laura hadn't called him, hadn't asked for help. He knocked on the door at 8 a.m. "I was in the area, had leftover materials from another job. Thought you might need some basic repairs before winter really sets in." The lie was transparent and kind. "I can't pay you." Good thing Evelyn already did. She prepaid for 20 hours of carpentry work 2 years ago, same as the computer consulting. He gestured at the sagging porch. "I'm thinking we start here before someone falls through those boards." Laura wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle it herself, wanted to maintain some illusion of independence. Instead, she heard herself say, "Coffee first. Fair warning, it's camping stove coffee. Best kind." They sat on the front steps, drinking terrible instant coffee, while Garrett and Bryn got ready for school. John pointed out structural issues Laura had missed. The northeast corner post was rotted. Through, the railing was held on mostly by paint. The boards under the swing were a lawsuit waiting to happen. "If you want to DIY any of this, I can teach you, but some of it needs professional work." "What's the DIY option?" "We replace boards together. I show you how to check for rot, how to sister joist basic carpentry. Takes longer but costs less, and you learn skills." "The professional option." "I bring a crew, we knock it out in 3 days, you pay professional rates." Laura did math in her head. Professional rates meant thousands she didn't technically have, even with Kenneth's offer of estate funds. "Let's go with the learning option." John smiled. "Good choice. More satisfying anyway." Over the next week, he came 3 mornings before Laura had to leave for her teaching job. Showed her how to check structural integrity, how to remove damaged boards without destroying surrounding ones, how to measure and cut replacements. He worked with patient precision, explaining everything twice, never making her feel stupid for asking questions. Garrett helped when school was out, fascinated by the geometry of construction. Bryn mostly watched from the window, still wary of the house and everything it represented. On day 5, John brought sandwiches for lunch. They ate on the partially repaired porch, watching rain move through the trees. "Can I ask you something?" Laura set down her sandwich. "Why are you really helping? And don't say because my mother prepaid. 20 hours of computer work is one thing. This is something else." He was quiet for a moment, considering. "Evelyn hired me 6 years ago. I was fresh out of the NSA, trying to build a civilian consulting business, struggling to find clients who trusted someone without an established reputation. She gave me a chance, paid me fairly, referred me to others. When my daughter got sick 3 years ago, she's fine now. Leukemia in remission. Evelyn sent flowers to the hospital every week. Never mentioned it, never asked for thanks. Just did it. Laura hadn't known Evelyn was capable of that kind of quiet kindness. She talked about you constantly, said you were the only person in her life who'd chosen integrity over expedience, said if something happened to her, I should help you however I could. He met her eyes. I'm helping because she believed in you, and because, from what I've seen, she was right to. The words settled between them, honest and uncomplicated. Thank you for telling me that. She left you more than money, Laura. She left you a network of people she trusted. Use it. 2 weeks after finding the evidence, Laura made her first major decision. She called Kenneth and accepted the estate advance. $31,000 for property taxes, $15,000 for immediate repairs, $10,000 for legal consultation, $56,000 total. The relief was immediate and practical. Property taxes paid, One catastrophe averted. She hired John's recommended forensic accountant, a woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in untangling complex financial crimes. Patricia reviewed the evidence drives over 2 days, then delivered her assessment in clear terms. This is prosecutable, all of it. The documentation is thorough, the evidence is admissible, and the crimes are serious enough that federal prosecutors would be very interested. What would happen if I turned this over? Christopher and Amanda would likely face 8 to 12 years in federal prison. Ronald 15 to 20, given the charity fraud. Asset forfeiture would take everything, houses, cars, savings. Their families would be financially destroyed. What if I don't turn it over? Patricia's expression stayed neutral. Then they continue as they are. Maybe they stop stealing now that Evelyn's gone. Maybe they don't. But they face no consequences for 2 decades of theft. Is there a middle option? You could use it as leverage, threaten to expose them unless they meet certain conditions. Restitution, stepping down from positions of power, that sort of thing. But be careful, extortion is illegal even if you're extorting criminals. Laura thanked her and paid the consultation fee from the estate advance. That night, she made a second decision. She would hold the evidence, not destroy it, not turn it over yet, keep it as insurance, as leverage if they came after her. But she wouldn't actively pursue prosecution unless they forced her hand. The decision felt like cowardice and wisdom in equal measure. BioClear's proposal arrived via email 3 weeks after Rebecca's phone call. $85 million for exclusive rights to the aquifer. 30-year contract. BioClear would build the infrastructure, handle all operations, pay Laura an upfront lump sum plus annual royalties based on extraction volume. The presentation was professional, glossy, full of language about sustainable practices and environmental stewardship. Laura researched every claim, found inconsistencies, found communities still fighting BioClear in court over broken promises. She drafted a response, "Thank you for the proposal. After careful consideration, I'm declining the offer. The aquifer will remain protected under private conservation easement. Hovered over send for 20 minutes. $85 million. Garrett's college fund. Bryn's future. Security for generations." All she had to do was let a corporation extract water from land they'd never see. She hit send before she could change her mind. Rebecca called within an hour. "Ms. Moore, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we could meet in person to discuss." "There's no misunderstanding. I'm not selling the water rights. We could increase the offer. $90 million. That's as high as we're authorized to go. $90 million. Enough to restore Blackwood to pristine condition and still have enough left over that her great-grandchildren would never worry about money." "My answer is no. Thank you for your interest." She hung up before Rebecca could make another counteroffer. Sat in the library, hands shaking, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Her phone buzzed. Text from John. "Just heard you told BioClear to pound sand. Good. That aquifer is part of something bigger than money. Your mom knew that. Now you do too. Then I'm proud of you, for whatever that's worth from a carpenter you met 3 weeks ago. It was worth more than he knew." Laura sold her first stock on a Tuesday morning in late November. 5,000 shares of Amazon, enough to net $750,000 after taxes and fees. Worked with a financial advisor, John had recommended someone who understood the need to sell, gradually avoid market impact. The money hit her account 3 days later, $750,000. More money than Laura had earned in her entire life teaching. She paid off every debt she had, Student loans, medical bills from Evelyn's final hospitalization, the credit card she'd maxed buying groceries. Walked away clean, no one owed, no one holding leverage. Set up college funds for Garrett and Bryn. 50,000 each to start, with plans to add more as she sold additional stock. Hired a contractor to begin serious restoration on Blackwood. Not just repairs, actual renovation. New plumbing, new electrical, new roof. The contractor estimated 8 months to make it genuinely livable. Started therapy. Found a counselor who specialized in grief and family trauma. Spent an hour every Wednesday talking about Evelyn, about Christopher and Amanda, about the weight of choices she hadn't asked to make. The therapist asked in their third session, "What do you want, Laura? Not what your mother wanted, not what's practical. What do you actually want?" Laura had to think about it, turned the question over for days. Finally answered in session 4, "I want my kids to grow up knowing their worth isn't measured in bank accounts. I want to protect something that matters. And I want the people who stole to face consequences, but not ones that destroy innocent kids. Those aren't mutually exclusive goals. They feel like it sometimes. Then maybe the question isn't choosing between them. Maybe it's figuring out how to honor all of them." The reframing helped. Not a choice between justice and mercy, but a way to hold both. December brought the first snow. Blackwood looked almost magical under 6 inches of white, the decay hidden beneath clean lines. Garrett had finished 3 coding courses and started building his first program, a simple encryption tool inspired by John's work. Bryn had made a friend at school, a girl who liked drawing as much as she did. They were adapting, not thriving yet, but surviving, which felt like enough. John stopped by Christmas Eve with gifts, a beginner's carpentry set for Garrett, an art supply kit for Bryn, and for Laura, a hand-carved wooden box with a note for keeping things safe. The evidence drives fit perfectly inside. Laura invited him to stay for dinner. Pasta and sauce from a jar. Garlic bread, nothing fancy. He ate like it was the best meal he'd had in months. After the kids went to bed, they sat in the library, now partially restored, at least dry and structurally sound, drinking wine from mugs, because Laura hadn't unpacked glasses yet. "Can I ask you something personal?" John nodded. "Why aren't you spending Christmas Eve with your daughter?" "She's with her mom this year. Custody agreement. I get her for New Year's." "I'm sorry, that must be hard." "It is, but it's also okay. We make it work." He looked around the library. "This is good work you're doing here. The house, I mean. It's coming back to life." "It's your work as much as mine. I just swing hammers. You're the one who decided to stay." The distinction felt important. They talked until midnight about nothing consequential. Books they'd read, places they'd traveled, small memories that felt safe to share. Laura realized she was laughing, genuinely laughing for the first time in months. When John left, he paused at the door. "Laura, I know this is complicated and there's a lot going on, but I'd like to see you again, not as a contractor or a consultant, as someone who enjoys your company." Her heart did something unexpected. "I'd like that too." "Good, because I've been wanting to ask for 3 weeks and kept chickening out." After he drove away, Laura stood on the porch, solid now, safe, and looked at Blackwood Estate. Still damaged, still incomplete, but no longer dying. Her phone buzzed. Email from Christopher. "Laura, we need to talk about the estate. There are irregularities in Mother's final financial statements that require discussion." "Call me." the first move in whatever game was coming. Laura deleted the email without responding. Some conversations could wait. Christopher's second email arrived on New Year's Day, subject line, urgent, estate compliance required. Laura, I've been patient, but we have a serious problem. The IRS has requested documentation regarding mother's estate distribution. Specifically, they want verification of offshore account transfers associated with the inheritance. My accountant says this is routine, but we need to coordinate our responses. We should meet. All of us. You, me, Amanda, even Ronald. Family discussions sort out the details. This affects everyone. Call me today. Chris Laura forwarded it to Patricia Chen with a single question, is this real or is he fishing? Patricia's response came within an hour reel. IRS typically audits estates over $20 million, but his urgency suggests he's worried about something specific. Be careful. A third email arrived that evening, this time from Amanda. Laura, ignore Christopher's dramatics, but we should talk. There are questions about Mother's final financial moves that I'm uniquely positioned to help you navigate. Attorney to attorney, so to speak. Coffee this week. Not attorney to attorney. Amanda was a corporate lawyer, not an estate specialist. She was probing. Laura deleted both emails without responding. The IRS notice arrived certified mail on January 9th. Addressed to Laura Moore, executor of estate. She wasn't the executor, Kenneth was, but apparently the IRS didn't care about technicalities. Request for documentation regarding one. All offshore account transfers in the 24 months preceding Evelyn Thatcher's death. 2. Corporate share distributions and associated valuations. 3. Any gifts, loans, or financial instruments transferred to heirs prior to death. 4. Complete accounting of estate assets and liabilities. Deadline for response, 30 days. Laura called Kenneth immediately. I got it too. Expected given the estate size. I'll handle the response. That's part of my role as executor. You don't need to do anything. Christopher and Amanda have been emailing about it. Silence on the line, the kind that meant Kenneth was choosing words carefully. They received similar notices, except theirs are more specific. The IRS is auditing their personal returns going back 10 years. Laura's pulse quickened. Why? When an estate this large is distributed, the IRS often examines whether heirs have been understating their own assets or income, looking for patterns of undisclosed gifts, unreported income, that sort of thing. Standard procedure. But it wasn't standard. Evelyn had set this up. The inheritance itself was the trigger. What happens if they find irregularities? Depends on the severity. Fines, penalties, back taxes, criminal prosecution in extreme cases. Kenneth paused. Laura, if you know something about their financial situations that I should be aware of now, would be the time to tell me. She thought about the evidence drives, the documented theft, the offshore accounts, the shell companies. I don't know anything that would help with an IRS audit. Technically true. The evidence would help with a criminal prosecution, not an audit. Though the line between those two things was thinner than most people realized. All right, call me if they pressure you directly. You're under no obligation to discuss your inheritance with them. Amanda appeared at Blackwood unannounced on a Saturday morning, driving a Mercedes that looked wrong on the gravel driveway. Laura was outside with John, helping him frame out a new section of porch railing. Garrett and Bryn were at Shirley's house, a weekend arrangement that had become routine. Amanda emerged in clothes too expensive for the Olympic Peninsula. Designer coat leather boots, sunglasses that probably cost more than Laura's monthly grocery budget. She picked her way across the muddy ground like she was navigating a minefield. "Laura, your phone must be broken. I've been trying to reach you." Laura set down her hammer. John stayed where he was, still working, but she felt his attention shift. "It works fine. I've been busy." Amanda took in the renovation work, the new boards, the progress that money had made possible. Her expression suggested she was doing math, calculating how Laura could afford this. "Can we talk privately? Anything you need to say, you can say here." A flicker of irritation crossed Amanda's face. "Fine. The IRS audit. I assume you got notified too." "Kenneth is handling it." Kenneth Aldridge is 65 years old and hasn't practiced tax law in decades. You need a specialist. I can recommend someone coordinate our responses so we're not contradicting each other. Laura picked up her hammer again, turned it over in her hands. "Why would we contradict each other? We each got what Mom left us. Pretty straightforward. Except it's not. Mother's financial moves in her final years were erratic, moving money between accounts, setting up new structures, making unusual purchases." Amanda gestured at Blackwood. "Like this place. She paid $2 million for a condemned building. The IRS will want to know why." $2 million. Laura hadn't known the purchase price. That was 40 times what the property was worth, even with the land. Maybe she liked Victorian architecture. Maybe she was sheltering assets, moving money off the books. And if that's what the IRS decides, we all inherit the consequences. The threat was clear. Amanda was building a narrative where Evelyn was the criminal, where her heirs were innocent victims of her schemes. John spoke up without looking away from his work. "You know what's interesting about that theory? If Evelyn was hiding assets, the IRS would find evidence in her records. But I bet her records are immaculate. Every transaction documented, every tax paid. The real question is whether her children's records are equally clean." Amanda's attention snapped to him. "Who are you?" "Carpenter. Also used to do computer security consulting. Helped plenty of people organize their digital records. You'd be amazed what forensic accountants can recover from supposedly deleted files." The color drained from Amanda's face. She looked at Laura with new wariness. "You hired someone to investigate us." "No, I hired someone to help me understand what Mom left me. What you do with your own finances is your business. Until it affects the estate. We're all in this together, Laura. If one of us has problems, we all have problems." Laura met her eyes directly. "Then I guess you should hope your records are clean." Amanda held her gaze for a long moment, realized she wasn't going to get anywhere, turned on her expensive boot heel, and walked back to her car. The Mercedes sprayed gravel leaving. John waited until the engine sounds faded. "She's scared." "Good. You know this is just the beginning, right? When the audit finds what it's going to find, they'll come at you harder, threaten pressure, maybe even try legal action. Let them try. I have Evelyn's evidence. They're the ones who should be scared." John smiled. "There's the steel I was wondering about. Evelyn said you had it. Took me a while to see it." Christopher arrived 2 weeks later, but he didn't come alone. Brought Stephanie, Ronald, even Matthew. 4 of them standing on the porch Laura and John had rebuilt, looking like an intervention committee. Christopher appointed himself spokesman. "We need to have a family meeting, all of us. No lawyers, no outsiders, just the people Mom left behind." Laura stood in the doorway, not inviting them in. "I'm listening." "The IRS audit has expanded. They're looking at the company, now questioning transactions going back 15 years. They've frozen some accounts pending review. This is spiraling, Laura. Sounds like you need a better accountant." Ronald stepped forward, his grief widower act replaced with something harder. You think this is funny? Thatcher Maritime employs 200 people. If the company collapses because of regulatory problems, those people lose their jobs. That's on all of us. The company isn't my responsibility. Mom left me out of that. She left you 20%. You had to sell it back, but you still benefited from its value. If that value was fraudulent, you're implicated too. The accusation was absurd, legally baseless, but effective as intimidation. Christopher tried a softer approach. Look, we got off on the wrong foot after Mom died. I know you felt like we dismissed you at the reading. That wasn't fair, but we're family. We need to stick together. Stephanie nodded along like a trained seal. Matthew stayed silent, his banker's instinct probably telling him this was a terrible strategy. Laura stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind her. Let them stand in the cold. You want to talk about family? Fine. Let's talk about how Christopher embezzled $6 million from the company over 8 years. How Amanda set up offshore accounts to hide millions in capital gains. How Ronald stole $7 million from a charity supposedly helping at-risk kids. The silence was absolute. Christopher found his voice first. That's insane. I don't know what you think you found in Mom's papers, but I found everything. Bank records, emails, forensic accounting reports, video evidence, audio recordings, 20 years of documentation showing exactly what you did and how you hid it. Stephanie grabbed Christopher's arm. Ronald's face went scarlet. Matthew looked like he wanted to disappear. Amanda recovered faster than the other's lawyers' training kicking in. If you had actual evidence, you would have turned it over to authorities. You're bluffing. I'm protecting myself. You come at me, I release everything to the FBI. Until then, I'm content to let the IRS do their job. Christopher's anger flashed hot. You vindictive little... Choose your next words carefully. He stopped. Stephanie pulled him back. Ronald tried reason. Laura, I don't know what your mother told you, but she wasn't well at the end. The medication, the pain, she wasn't thinking clearly. Whatever she believed about us, she was perfectly clear. I was there. You weren't. None of you were. Laura felt the truth of it settle in her bones. She documented everything because she knew exactly who you were. The inheritance was her final gift. She gave you enough rope to hang yourselves. If you turn over false evidence, it's not false, and you know it. That's why you're here. That's why you're scared. The four of them stood frozen, whatever plan they'd rehearsed, falling apart. Christopher made one last attempt. What do you want? Money, more shares, name your price. The offer was grotesque and desperate. I want you to resign from Thatcher Maritime, all of you. You sell your shares to an independent buyer, step away from the company, and never touch it again. You make full restitution. Christopher pays back the $6 million, Amanda settles with the IRS and pays what she owes, Ronald repays the charity fraud. That's impossible. Or I go to the FBI today. You choose. Silence stretched. Then Christopher laughed, bitter and harsh. You don't have the guts. You're too nice, too soft. That's why Mom left you a condemned house instead of real power. She knew you couldn't handle it. Laura pulled out her phone, found Patricia's number, held it where they could see. Want to test that theory? Christopher's smile died. Amanda spoke carefully. We need time. Lawyers to review terms. This isn't something we can decide standing on a porch. You have 1 week. After that, I make my own decision. She went back inside, locked the door, and watched through the window as they argued on the porch for 5 more minutes before leaving in 2 separate cars. Her hand shook holding the phone. John emerged from the library where he'd been giving them privacy. You okay? Ask me in a week. The call came on day 6. Kenneth, his voice tight with controlled anger. Laura, I just received a lawsuit filing. Christopher and Amanda are suing you for undue influence, claiming you manipulated Evelyn in her final months, isolated her from family, coerced her into changing the will. Laura sank into a chair. Can they do that? They can file anything. Winning is different, but it's going to be expensive and ugly. They're asking the court to invalidate the will and redistribute everything equally among all heirs. I never even discussed the will with Mom. I didn't know what she was planning. I know, and I have documentation proving that, meeting notes, timestamps, showing you weren't present when she revised the will, but we'll have to prove it in court. Laura made a decision. Kenneth, I need to send you something. Encrypted files. Can you receive them securely? Yes. What kind of files? Evidence. Everything Evelyn collected on Christopher, Amanda, and Ronald. I need you to review it. Confirm it's as solid as I think it is. Then I need you to forward it to the FBI. Laura, once we do that, there's no taking it back. I know. They forced my hand. I gave them a choice. They chose this. She heard him typing. Send me the encryption key. I'll review everything tonight. After the call ended, Laura sat with her phone looking at the evidence files Patricia had organized. 20 years of crime reduced to gigabytes of data. Garrett appeared in the doorway. Mom, what's wrong? She tried to smile. Grown-up stuff, baby. Nothing for you to worry about. Is Uncle Chris suing us? I heard you on the phone. 8 years old and too observant for comfort. Yes, but it's going to be okay. Are you going to use Grandma's evidence against him? Laura blinked. How do you know about that? I'm not stupid. I was there when Mr. Hayes decrypted the drives. I saw some of the files before you sent me upstairs. And I heard you talking to him about choices. She should have known. Garrett absorbed information like a sponge, processed it faster than most adults. Yes, I'm turning it over to the FBI. Good. They're bad people. Grandma knew it. You know it. Sometimes bad people need to face consequences. The moral clarity of childhood. Laura wished she could hold on to that simplicity. It's not that easy, honey. They have kids too, families who'll suffer. They should have thought about that before they stole money. Hard to argue with that logic. Kenneth called back at midnight. I've reviewed everything. Laura, this is airtight. Prosecutable on multiple federal charges. I'm obligated to tell you that once I forward this to authorities, it becomes public record. Your family relationships will be destroyed. There will be media attention. It will be ugly. Uglier than them suing me for undue influence. Different kind of ugly, but yes, potentially worse. Laura lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet around her, still settling into its renewed bones. Do it. Send everything to the FBI. Let justice work however it's supposed to work. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Kenneth was quiet for a moment. Evelyn would be proud of you. Evelyn put me in this position. I'm not sure pride is the right word. She gave you power. What you do with it is up to you. That's the difference between you and them. You agonize over choices they'd make without hesitation. After hanging up, Laura couldn't sleep. Went downstairs, found John had left a note on the kitchen counter, finished the south wall repairs. Looks good. Call if you need anything. Jay Simple. Steady, uncomplicated. She called him anyway, knowing it was late, not caring. He answered on the second ring voice alert despite the hour. Laura. What's wrong? I turned over the evidence. Kenneth's sending it to the FBI tomorrow. Okay. How are you feeling? Terrified, sick, certain I'm doing the right thing, and absolutely sure I'm making a catastrophic mistake. That sounds about right for a choice this big. I keep thinking about their kids. Christopher's daughter, Amanda's son, they didn't do anything wrong. John was quiet then. My daughter asked me once why people go to jail if they have kids who need them. I told her that having children doesn't make you immune to consequences, that facing those consequences is part of being responsible for your choices. Did she understand? Well, she was 6. She said it seemed mean. I told her sometimes the world is mean, but that doesn't make it wrong. Laura laughed a broken sound. Wisdom from a 6-year-old. Kids see things clearly sometimes. No complications, just cause and effect. They talked until 2 in the morning about nothing and everything. When Laura finally hung up, she felt steadier. Not good, not certain, but steady. The FBI arrived at Christopher's office on a Wednesday morning. Simultaneously raided Amanda's law firm and Ronald's foundation. Seized computers, files, phones, detained all 3 for questioning. Kenneth called with updates as they came in. Christopher's been charged with wire fraud and embezzlement, 11 counts. Amanda's looking at tax fraud and conspiracy, 6 counts. Ronald's charges are the most serious. Charity fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, 18 counts total. When will they be arraigned? Tomorrow. The prosecutor is asking for high bail given flight risk and asset complexity. Laura felt nothing. Numbness where guilt or satisfaction should have been. The media found the story by evening. Seattle Times ran it front page, shipping magnates' heirs charged in $18 million fraud scheme. The article mentioned Laura as the daughter who'd inherited, differently implying she'd been the one to alert authorities. Her phone started ringing, reporters mostly. She let them all go to voicemail. One call got through because it came from a number she recognized. Christopher somehow allowed one phone call using it to reach her instead of a lawyer. His voice was raw. "You destroyed us. You destroyed everything." "No, you destroyed yourselves. I just stopped covering for you." "My daughter is 12 years old, Laura. She's going to watch her father go to prison because you couldn't let the past stay buried." The guilt landed then, sharp and immediate. "Your daughter is going to watch her father face consequences for crimes he committed. That's different." "You self-righteous." Laura hung up, blocked the number. Bryn had been watching from the stairs. "Was that Uncle Chris?" "Yes." "Is he mad?" "Very." "Good. He was mean to you at Grandma's funeral. I didn't like him. 7 years old and already keeping score." Laura wondered what lessons her children were learning from all this. The legal process moved faster than expected. Christopher, Amanda, and Ronald all took plea deals within 6 weeks. Christopher got 8 years federal prison. Amanda, 7 years. Ronald, 15, the charity fraud carrying heavier penalties. Asset forfeiture took everything. Houses, cars, savings, stocks. Stephanie filed for divorce before Christopher's sentencing. Matthew did the same with Amanda. The civil lawsuit disappeared. Hard to sue someone for undue influence when you're pleading guilty to federal fraud. Laura felt no triumph, just exhaustion and a hollow sense that justice was colder than stories suggested. The only light came from unexpected places. Christopher's daughter reached out through Facebook, a message from a 12-year-old with surprising maturity. "I don't understand everything that happened, but my mom says my dad made bad choices. I'm sorry he was mean to you. I hope you and your kids are okay." Laura cried, reading it, responded carefully, "I'm sorry you're going through this. None of it is your fault. You're a brave, thoughtful person, and I hope you know that." They didn't become close, but the exchange mattered. Spring arrived with restoration 70% complete. Blackwood was livable now, running water, functional electricity rooms that didn't threaten collapse. John's crew had moved on to cosmetic work, refinishing hardwood, repairing plaster, restoring the library to something resembling its Victorian glory. Laura sold another $1 million in stock to finish the work. Set up a proper trust fund for Garrett and Bryn. $5 million each, managed by a fiduciary. Kept $10 million liquid for operating expenses and future needs. Donated $5 million to organizations working on criminal justice reform and support for children of incarcerated parents. The remaining $26 million in stocks she left invested. Legacy money, generational wealth, the kind of security that changed everything. But the most important decision came on a morning in April. She sat in Kenneth's office, with John beside her, signing papers that created the Evelyn Thatcher Conservation Trust. 200 acres, including the aquifer, designated as protected wilderness in perpetuity. No commercial development, no extraction rights, no sale possible. Kenneth reviewed the documents. This is irrevocable. Once you sign, you can't change your mind. I know. You're setting aside land worth potentially $90 million, more if development patterns change. I'm protecting something that matters more than money. She signed. John witnessed. Kenneth notarized. Walking out, John took her hand. They'd been seeing each other properly for 2 months now. Dinners, when his daughter was with her mom, weekend hikes, quiet evenings, where they talked about futures instead of pasts. Your mother would approve. I think she already did. That's why she set everything up this way. You think she knew you'd refuse the BioClear money? I think she knew I'd choose right over easy, even when right was terrifying. They drove back to Blackwood through spring rain. The house stood solid, and renewed windows gleaming porch sound the decay finally arrested. Garrett met them at the door, excited about some coding breakthrough. Bryn had painted a watercolor of the estate, remarkable for a 7-year-old, showing Blackwood not as it was, but as she imagined it could be. That evening, Laura stood in the restored library and opened Evelyn's final journal, Volume 6, the one Shirley had given her months ago. The last entry dated 3 days before Evelyn's death. If you're reading this, Laura, you've made your choices. I don't know what they were. I couldn't predict them. I could only create circumstances that would reveal your character. By now, you know about the stocks, the evidence, the land. You know I gave Christopher and Amanda exactly what they wanted. Money and shares tied to their crimes. You know I gave you something harder, choices without easy answers. Some people might call this cruel. I call it honest. You are not defined by what you inherit. You're defined by what you do with it. I'm proud of you, not for any specific choice, but for the fact that you wrestled with them, that you felt the weight, that you understood power isn't just having resources. It's knowing when to use them and when to set them aside. Blackwood isn't just a house. It's a reminder that beautiful things can survive ugly times if someone cares enough to do the work. You're doing the work. Keep doing it. I love you. I loved you more than the empire I built, more than the money I accumulated, more than the revenge I planned. You were always the point. Tell my grandchildren about me, not the parts the newspapers will write. Tell them about the fishing trips, the late-night talks, the woman who believed love was loyalty, and loyalty was legacy. Tell them their grandmother wasn't perfect, but she tried to leave the world better than she found it. And, Laura, thank you for staying, for caring, for being exactly who you are. All my love forever. Mom. Laura closed the journal. John found her there an hour later, tears dried on her face, something like peace settling where chaos had lived. "You okay?" "Yeah, I think I finally am." 2 years later, Blackwood Estate hosted its first public event. The Evelyn Thatcher Conservation Trust's dedication ceremony. 200 acres of protected wilderness educational programs for kids hiking. Trails at a small museum in the restored carriage house. Laura stood on the rebuilt porch watching people arrive. Shirley Croft in the front row. Kenneth Aldridge delivering the dedication speech. John's daughter playing with Garrett and Bryn, the three of them laughing at something only kids found hilarious. Patricia Chen had come bringing her wife, the contractor who'd done the restoration work. Teachers from Garrett and Bryn's school. Community members who'd watched Blackwood transform from blight to landmark. Kenneth's speech was brief and perfect. Evelyn Thatcher understood that true wealth isn't measured in accounts or assets. It's measured in what outlasts us. This land protected forever is her legacy. Her daughter's courage in honoring that legacy is the greatest inheritance any parent could hope for. Afterward, people walked the trails. Garrett gave tours of the museum, explaining architectural details with 8-year-old enthusiasm turned 10-year-old expertise. Bryn sold her watercolors at a small table, proceeds going to the trust. Laura found herself alone for a moment in the library, surrounded by restored books and polished wood. Her phone buzzed. Email from Christopher's daughter, now 14, saw the news about the Conservation Trust. "It's really cool what you did. My dad talks about Grandma sometimes, says he wishes he'd listened to her more. Anyway, hope you're doing good," Laura responded. "Thank you for reaching out. I'm glad your dad has time to reflect. You're growing into a remarkable person. I can tell from your messages. Stay strong." John appeared in the doorway. "There you are. Your son just convinced 6 people to donate to the trust by explaining watershed ecosystems. He's terrifying." "He gets it from his grandmother. Which parts, the brilliance or the ruthlessness? Both probably, hopefully with better moral guardrails." They stood together, watching through the window, as Bryn made a sale, as Kenneth talked with visitors, as the house Evelyn had chosen as weapon and gift finally became what it was always meant to be. A sanctuary, a legacy, a reminder that the greatest inheritances aren't the ones you can count. John's hand found hers. "You did good here. We did good. I couldn't have managed this alone." "Sure you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." That night, after everyone left, Laura sat on the porch with both kids. Stars visible above the trees now that spring growth had settled. The forest alive, with night sounds. Garrett looked up from his tablet. "Mom, I've been thinking about Grandma's evidence. The stuff you gave to the FBI. What about it? You could have kept it secret. Let Uncle Chris and Aunt Amanda get away with everything. Would have been easier. Probably. But you didn't, because it was wrong to let them keep stealing, even if prosecuting them was hard." "That's right. Do you regret it?" Laura considered. 2 years of distance had clarified things. "I regret that their kids suffered, but I don't regret stopping the theft. Sometimes the right choice and the easy choice are different things." Bryn leaned against her shoulder. "Grandma knew you'd pick the right choice. That's why she gave you the house." "How do you know that?" "Because the house is for people who stay. Uncle Chris and Aunt Amanda didn't stay. They left. You stayed even when it was hard, so Grandma gave you the thing that needed someone to stay." 9 years old and understanding what Laura had taken months to grasp, they sat in comfortable silence. 3 people who'd survived chaos and chosen something better on the other side. Laura's phone buzzed one final time. Text from John. Tomorrow, we start on the third-floor restoration. I'm thinking we turn that northwest room into something special. Room where you found everything. Seems meaningful. She typed back, "Perfect. See you at 8." Above them, Blackwood stood solid and renewed. Not perfect. The east wing still needed work. The widow's walk remained unsafe. The grounds required constant maintenance. But alive, protected, home. Evelyn's final gift wasn't the money or the evidence, or even the land. It was the understanding that inheritance means nothing if you're not willing to do the work that makes it matter. Laura pulled both children close, feeling their warmth, their weight, their certainty that tomorrow would come, and they'd face it together. In the library, Evelyn's journals waited on a shelf. 6 volumes documenting a plan 20 years in the making. Someday, when Garrett and Bryn were older, Laura would let them read everything. Let them understand the complexity of the woman who'd shaped their lives without ever meeting them. But tonight, this was enough. A house restored a legacy, protected a family healing. The greatest inheritance Laura had learned wasn't what you received. It was what you chose to build with it.